Hi there, welcome to Quilting in Your PJs. My name is Surya, and today I'm going to try out some crumb quilting. Start with all those scraps you promised yourself you'd use years ago. I like to separate mine between small, medium, and large scraps. Now you can press your scraps if you want. Some people do and some people don't. I usually do. I'm not pressing these because I'm just demonstrating. But what you want to do is just, trim your pieces up so they're even. But you don't want to have to worry about trimming perfect squares or perfect triangles or anything like that. You can make your shapes a little bit irregular, and that's going to make your quilt more interesting. The thing about this is there are really no big rules to follow. You just don't have to think very much about it. Next, you want to find two pieces that are about the same size. And then just sew them together, right sides together, just like you do with most quilting. And with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you're going to come out with pieces that look like this. Or like that. Then you're going to take those pieces and you're going to trim them up so that you have a straight edge to attach your next piece to each time. Well, see, now those match, so I'm not going to put those two together. But I could put those two together. Or maybe I could put those together. So I'm using a seam allowance of 1/4 inch, and then I'm using a stitch length of 2 because I want my seams to be a little bit stronger than usual. Usually you use 2.5, but I'm doing 2. And as you sew your pieces together, you can also, as you can see, chain piece them just to make things go quicker. Just keep feeding pieces under the machine and chain piecing them. Here you can see I've sewn my sets of 2 together already. And, so now I have 4sies, and then I'll sew my 4sies together and I'll end up with 8sies. And my block is going to keep growing and growing until I've got a nice big piece of fabric and I can square that piece of fabric up to come up with a final block. Now, as you put your pieces together, you're just going to keep trimming and trimming so that you have straight edges to work with. Trim there, trim there, trim there or trim there. Trim any way you want. So here's an example of one of my final blocks. Here's another example. And I can just keep putting blocks together until I get a quilt. Okay, so what is the smallest piece? What's the smallest crumb you can fit in a crumb quilt? Well, in my opinion, I'm going to say it's 7/8 of an inch in either direction. 7/8 of an inch will get you a piece like this right here, which is a little over 1/4 of an inch. If you go any smaller than that, you're going to have, it's going to be difficult to press your seam. Okay, so now I'm back at the ironing board, and as you can see, I've got this seam pressed open here. That one's pressed open. This one's pressed off to the side. That one's pressed off to the side. I prefer to press my seams to the side, but with this crumb quilting, I am finding that that doesn't always work too well. When you get a lot of these little pieces, especially the little tiny ones, and you'll see like this one's going to get tiny, and this one's going to get super tiny, and that one especially tiny, you know, once something else gets seamed onto it. So when you get all these tiny pieces, you want to be careful when you press. Some of the seams you'll want to press open. If you don't press them open, they're going to be super bulky when you try to quilt through them, and it'll just be messy. So like this one, I don't know, maybe I can just press that one off to the side and get away with that. I think I can. It feels okay. I've been feeling them with my fingers, and if they feel extra bumpy, I just go ahead and I open them up to press them. Okay, so if you're pressing your seams and you know you run across one that is kind of thick, you know, like this one here, I had to press off to the side. I would have liked to have pressed it open, but it was a weird situation, so I had to press it to the side, and it's kind of a bulky seam, so I wanted to really flatten it out. So, you know, I pressed it with a lot of steam, but that wasn't good enough. And Joann's has this thing that you can buy. It's called a Tailors clapper. It's a big thick piece of wood, and you press the wood on the seam, and when you press the wood down on the seam, it absorbs all the steam in the fabric, and when you lift it off, you get a nice flat press. It's really nice. Well, I don't want to spend $28 for a piece of wood at Joann's, so you know, where else can I get a piece of wood for less money? Home Depot. So anyway, $2.99 I think for a nice big piece of red oak at Home Depot. And I was going to cut this in half so I could have 2 of them, but I like it long because you know, if I'm making a pair of pants or something, or just have an extra long seam, you know, this thing is great. So I give it some steam and put that down on there. You know, hold it for about 10 seconds, or whenever you know, start to get impatient, you know, lift it off, and you get a nice flat seam. So this is going to happen kind of naturally, but if you have a variety of shapes in your crumb quilt, which most likely your scrap bag is going to have small, medium, and large shapes in it, as well as some petite squares. So, you know, the tiny ones are great because they really add interest to your quilt. So try and keep sort of a variety of shapes going, and be aware of, you know, how the shapes are playing with each other, how they're kind of dancing together, and you know, just being mindful of that will, you know, make your crumb quilt even more interesting. It's hard to mess one of these up. It's going to kind of naturally come together in a really cool way, but you know, you can also have a little bit of a hand in it, have a little bit of control of what's going on here. Now, I'd also like to talk a little bit about color. Now see, I've kind of got a color thing going on here. I've got blues and whites and a little bit of purple, and the, you know, the dark navy in here. And you don't have to do that. You can just grab out of your scrap bag. You know, I was a little bit more of a control freak, and I wanted something a little bit more orchestrated. So I separated my colors from my scrap bag into different colors. So that way I can make blocks that, you know, I don't know, that I just have a little more control over. You know, you can just pull right out of your scrap bag and make it a total scrappy quilt. you know, and put some sashing around the blocks, and it will look great. No doubt about it. But, you know, if you want to do something a little more artsy and fun, you know, you can play with the color. And one thing that I do with color, and this is something an art teacher told me when I was in school, is he said, you know, emulate nature. So whenever I'm playing with color, I'm usually, and I love nature, I'm usually off in nature in my mind. Now this piece is pretty ominous, I think. I want small, medium, and large, but this is huge and it's kind of like a big black hole. So I think I'm probably going to cut it. I'll do this with a rotary cutter later, but just to show you, I'm probably going to take at least half of it off. And that'll make things a little more interesting. There we go. Much better.